Noelle, run away now. Leaving those words, the phone immediately cut off, and no matter how many times I tried calling back, I couldn't get through. My usually calm mother sounded desperate, convincing me that something must be wrong. What happened to Mom? Mother had been battling an illness for several years and had recently been hospitalized. Before her hospitalization, she called every day, but now, being in the hospital, she hadn't called, which I found strange. I rushed to the hospital, but by the time I arrived, she had already passed away. This can't be happening. Overwhelmed with grief, I couldn't say anything. The hospital where she was admitted was about an hour or two away from my apartment, and I regretted not acting sooner. The meaning of run away now remained a mystery. I thought I would never understand its meaning. However, amidst my grief and confusion, I unexpectedly discovered the meaning behind her words. I'm Noelle, a 25-year-old office worker. My parents divorced before I can remember, and my mother raised me with great care by herself. After becoming an adult and living alone, I saw her less often, but as a child, she took me to my favorite amusement parks and sent me to college despite financial struggles. She was a very kind mother. Although she passed away after a long battle with her illness, the mysterious words "run away now" stayed in my mind. I returned to my childhood home for the first time in a while to prepare for the funeral. What is this? Feeling nostalgic as I entered the living room, I found the room in complete disarray. The wardrobes and closets were particularly ransacked, and I realized that my mother's valuables were missing. The necklace I gave her with my first paycheck was gone too. I immediately contacted the police, but they said it might be the work of a serial burglar that's been active recently. I left this matter to the police and proceeded with the funeral preparations. On that day, many people came to mourn my mother. People who had been kind to us in the past attended, bringing back nostalgic memories, but I felt a pang of loneliness realizing I would live without family from now on. Still, I decided to see my mother off with a smile, sharing memories with everyone. After the funeral, a man approached me.
Long time no see. Do you remember me?
I didn't recognize the man who spoke to me so familiarly and wondered if such a young person could be one of my mother's acquaintances. I'm sorry, who are you?
Well, you were little, so it's not surprising you don't remember. I'm your older brother, Dominic.
He smiled warmly. I was shocked to hear that I had an older brother. Moreover, I had never met this person before. As I was skeptical, Dominic showed me a photo.
Look, here's Mom, and this is you.
That is definitely my mother when she was younger. The woman was unmistakably my mother, and the child next to her looked just like Dominic. It seemed true that he was my brother, and I was happy to know I had family. But why had Mother hidden his existence from me? But I never knew I had an older brother.
I see. It must have been hard losing Mom. But now I'll be here to support you.
With his words, I nodded. Yes. But the questions remained. I had often wished for siblings when I was young. It seemed unlike my mother not to find a way for us to meet. Maybe she had her reasons. I tried to convince myself of this and suddenly thought of something else to ask. By the way, what about Dad? Didn't he come?
Oh, Dad said he has nothing to do with us anymore and didn't come.
I see. I hope I can meet him someday.
Dad's a terrible person. He practically abandoned you and Mom.
Even though they divorced, It seemed cruel for him not to attend her funeral. Dominic continued to check on me, often inviting me out for meals. During one of these outings, he told me that after the divorce, Dad frequently asked Mom for money, and he was worried that he might come after me next. Dominic seemed very concerned about me, and having a brother felt reassuring. However, I was soon to discover a shocking truth during the process of sorting through my mother's belongings. About a month after the funeral, while finishing up the organization of her belongings, I found a notebook in a dresser. As I flipped through it, I realized it was my mother's diary. It seemed she had written in it daily since before the divorce, and there were 10 volumes in total. Feeling a bit guilty, I opened it. Seeing her neat handwriting brought tears to my eyes. Dominic came to visit. Even though we had agreed never to meet again as per my ex-husband's conditions, I was so happy that I secretly gave him some pocket money. I couldn't help but chuckle. It was endearing to see such interactions that I was unaware of, but the tone gradually changed. Dominic visited again today. But he just said, "Give me money," and left. I began to feel uneasy about my brother's behavior as described by my mother. His actions were increasingly troubling. Today, Dominic threatened me and I gave him money again. Indeed, it was written in my mother's handwriting. What does she mean by threatened? It gave me a bad feeling. When I refused to give him money, he said hurtful things. Today, he told me, "Your only worth is your money." The trembling handwriting made it seem all too real. Why would my brother say such things? I'm enduring it because it's his rebellious phase. As I read on, trying to understand her perspective, I stumbled upon a horrifying entry. Today, when I refused, he brought a knife from the dining room and threatened me. I was so scared that I gave him the money. I know I shouldn't keep doing this, but what can I do? I couldn't believe what I was reading. I was horrified by my brother's true nature and felt ashamed for not realizing it sooner. The person described in the diary seemed like a different person from the brother who had kindly smiled at me. Even though we live apart, he's still my precious son. I can't go to the police because it might be due to the divorce. Her words squeezed my heart. I understood her feelings, but I couldn't see someone who threatened my beloved mother with a knife as my brother anymore. He said he'd extort money from my sister too. I can't let that happen. It seemed she kept his existence a secret to protect me, but her diary revealed everything. I have to protect her from Dominic before I go. Surely, the phone call that day was meant to warn me about my brother. She must have been afraid he would harm me. Thinking about how he tormented my mother and attended her funeral with a straight face made me furious. Holding my mother's diary, I decided to take revenge on my brother.
Why did you call me here so suddenly?
I have something to tell you. 3 days later, I invited my brother to the house. Being alone with someone who once used a knife to threaten my mother seemed dangerous, but I had a plan. "I know what you did to Mom." When I said that, he widened his eyes slightly in shock, but quickly returned to a composed demeanor. He intended to keep denying it no matter what.
What are you talking about?
Don't play dumb. You were extorting money from her, threatening her.
No, I don't know anything about that.
He had no intention of admitting it and continued to play the role of the kind brother. Realizing this wouldn't get anywhere, I decided to perform a little act to get him to confess. Before she died, she told me everything. I pretended not to know to get back at you. Hearing this, his attitude visibly changed.
Huh.
He sighed, slouched in his chair, and looked at me with annoyance.
So, you found out. Huh.
Why did you threaten her and even use a knife? To my question, he responded, and after a mock thoughtful pause,
Stress relief?
he said with a smile. There wasn't a hint of guilt in his expression, as if he believed he had done nothing wrong. She never went to the police because she was thinking of you.
Of course not. I'm her son. I was just getting pocket money.
He said without a shred of remorse. I felt dizzy. I couldn't believe this man was my blood brother. I'm going to the police.
Huh. They won't listen to you without evidence.
I have evidence. Saying this, I pulled out her diary. She wrote everything down in here.
I could just tear that up right now.
There are many more diaries and pieces of evidence she left. Destroying this one won't help. His face twisted. Realizing he couldn't easily erase the evidence, he began trembling with anger.
So, I just have to stop you from going to the police?
Shouting, he kicked his chair and started knocking things off the shelves. The room became a mess as vases and cups shattered. Once he had knocked everything over, he ran to the dining area and grabbed a knife, slowly approaching me.
If you agree to be my cash cow, I'll let you go.
At that moment, the sound of a police siren echoed nearby. He seemed to be very afraid of the police, looking around in panic. When the police entered the house, he was still holding the knife, looking bewildered.
Why are the police here now?
He shouted in frustration. He seemed shaken by the presence of the officers in the living room. I asked them to come.
Huh.
He looked at me dumbfounded. I decided to reveal the big part of my act. I asked a colleague from my company to call the police at this time.
What?
I figured her diary alone might not be enough evidence, so I planned to have the police catch him in the act of threatening me with a knife. It was all a setup.
Stop messing around.
He shouted, lunging at me, but was immediately subdued by the police.
Hey, stop it. Let go of me.
He struggled violently, trying to break free, but with two officers restraining him, there was no escape. After they handcuffed him, he seemed to realize he had no way out and became quiet.
I'm sorry. Forgive me. I was wrong.
Desperate to avoid being arrested, he started apologizing to me frantically, his face contorting as if about to cry. No matter how much you apologize, it won't reach her anymore.
Who cares about that? Just don't involve the police.
It's not that simple for us. She was always afraid of you.
Parents are just cash cows for their kids.
He kept cursing, but I ignored him. As he was being led away by the police, he started sobbing.
I'm sorry. Please, not the police.
I won't forgive you for what you did to her. Officers, take him away. As I declared this, his face twisted in agony. Thinking only of his own protection to the end, he was finally taken away by the police with a miserable look, tears and snot streaming down his face. Later, the police investigation revealed that he was a habitual burglar and was sent to prison. It seemed he had been desperately avoiding the police because he feared exposure of his past crimes. He was also the one who had ransacked the house and pawned the necklace I had given her. Even in prison, he kept causing trouble, extending his sentence repeatedly. Although I lost my dear mother, I am now engaged to the colleague who called the police that day. He is kind and understanding, and I am happy to have met him. I'm sure she is watching over us from heaven. When we visit her grave together, I know she will be happy for us. How did you like this story? Please subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.